All right, all right. Shout out to everybody in the chat. I see y'all in the chat on this Friday, the 13th. Shout out to everybody. Hope you enjoying your Friday the 13th. Got a good show for y'all tonight. I mean, there's so much stuff going on in the world. Wow. Wow. So much stuff going on in the world, y'all. I think that it was only right that we have one of the brightest when it comes to cosmic events on the show today to let us know a deeper meaning behind some of the things that we may be seeing. As I told y'all before I bring this brother on, I've gotten readings from the brother before. The brother's sharp at what he do. That's why he stay busy. You know what I'm saying? He stay with a line. People stay going to the services. Without further ado, want to welcome back to the platform my brother Akhu. Welcome back, Rod. Oh shit, Rod's frozen. Rod, can you hear me? Yo, Rod.
Peace, guys.
Yeah, I hear you now.
You
You
hear
hear
me
me?
now?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I said peace, everybody.
Indeed, indeed. You're right. You look like you lost some weight, man. You getting in shape.
What I did was I injured this entire area right here working out and
Yeah.
deflated my muscles in this arm. Literally, this arm, this is all I can make of this muscle, and it don't compare to this arm. So it looks like that because the muscles collapsed.
You look younger, man. Trying to
I hope
reverse age on us, man.
I wish.
yo,
If I could
yo.
go back to being my younger self, it'd be over with.
Oh man.
If
Yo,
I get to
Rob,
keep
man. You got
everything,
that. What'd you say?
I said, if I got to keep everything and go back,
Mm.
it'd be over with.
Be over with, huh?
It'd be curtains, yeah.
Oh man. Rob, we got a lot going on right now, man.
Yeah. I
We got a
told you at the beginning of the year it was going to get busy this year. So all they got to really do is go back and look at that forecast for the year. You know, the opposition of Mars and Pluto, any aspect, any tight aspect. And what I mean by that is we use 30-degree increments. So the closer to the exactness of a multiple fractal, the more effective the indication in the chart. So at the New Year's, I did something new this year. I usually use the first day of Aries.
uh-huh.
Okay. But I used the first day of the calendar to see
Mm,
if I could
right,
use January 1st as a marker
right.
for what's going on. And it works because it works like any other birth chart. You know, it's like if it was a baby born in the White House on January 1st. So I've been looking at that chart, and in astrology, we have a thing called minor progressions where we move the moon at the same rate of the sun. Naturally, the moon moves 13 times faster than the sun. Okay, so what we're really doing is slowing the chart down about 13 times and watching the motion of the planets as they unfold at that rate. And what really got me was it's hitting for everything. All right.
Mm, right.
It hit specifically for when Trump sent or tried to send troops to LA to quell those demonstrations. The
Mm-hmm.
moon, the P4 moon, had moved from its initial place at a 26 degrees Capricorn and had moved all the way to the progressed position of Chiron and Aries. Chiron talks about failed attempts, it talks about inconveniences, and in Aries deals with the military. So what was failed was Trump's ability to get support from the military to quell the demonstrations and the anarchy that's going on in California. At the same time, um, Uranus by transit, it done made a move into Gemini in a perfect aspect or trine aspect, 120 degrees or 240 degrees from Pluto.
Right, right.
And, a lot of astrologers, when they come into this craft, they get the idea that aspects are good and aspects are bad. And they associate this English terminology with the normal dictionary connotation of what is good and what is bad. And to make the long story short, that really can't be done. Good is a technical term that really points to the easiness of the capacity of these two planets to mingle. And bad means that there may be some tension between the forces involved. Okay? So, like fire and water is never good because water could put fire out. You understand? So, to think that you're going to get positive results for fire simply because of the temperature of the water is ridiculous. It's going to be the same every time. Water is going to put fire at a limitation. So this is what the aspects mean. It just means when they say good aspect, it doesn't necessarily mean good as in gain, as in something you would appreciate, as in something you would enjoy. It means good as in there's very little outside interference between the relationship that's going on between these two. So what to make it clearer for the folks, if a planet is so-called harm indicating planet is in good aspect to another harm indicating planet, then that's good for harm. You see what I'm saying? It's good that nothing is going to get in the way between these two energies blended. It has nothing to do with good as in something I desire or something bad. So when the trine to Pluto occurred from Uranus moving into Gemini, that put a great shift on a lot of alliances and nations because Uranus is the planet that points to alliances and to nations. And it even is happening before our eyes to the president and his ICE manager, Elon Trump. You see, they had a falling out. This had everything to do with the fact that Mars sits in the first place or the first house of Trump's chart. And there was a question amongst a study group that I'm engaging in with my students. And there was a question as to what Trump's real rising was. Okay. And my wife, she participates in these studies, right? She had already worked out his ascendant and we had discussed it, but I failed to realize what that point was. So in the study group, someone had asked, they said, what rising is Elon Musk? And I was like, I don't know. It appears to me watching this confrontation between him and Trump that he's a natural Leo, but he looks like a Virgo to me, right? And my wife, hearing this, screamed. She said, "Yo, he's a Leo in the country of his birth, and in this country he is a Virgo, and this is why he looks like a Virgo to me, because I trained my ability to recognize human characteristics as signs of the zodiac here in this country." But anyway, so when I saw that they were at odds, I said to myself, if it's kicking off on a personal level for people at such a rate, then I know it's going to be special for societally speaking. And after the last few days since the minor progressed moon has moved over Aries, we've seen drastic acts of violence continually.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And I think I mentioned, I'm not sure, so y'all can go back and call me out if you want. But I think I mentioned crashes, catastrophes in concerning mobility or machines at the beginning of the year. And you see how these planes been dropping.
Yeah. Most recent
So
Indian
even
one.
if it's a grand conspiracy, some people conspired to bring this about, and the chart is gonna relay and convey the reality of what happens, regardless whether we think that whether it naturally occurs or unnaturally occurs. Okay, there was a an earthquake about 4 or 5 days ago here in Atlanta. Did you feel it?
I didn't feel it. I heard about it. I did hear about
Okay.
it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't feel it. What happened in my residence and in my domain, in my neighborhood, was the lights went out.
Mm.
Okay, so but that happens when there's not an earthquake. So I didn't notice. I just saw the um the reports about the earthquake, they hit Atlanta, and I'm like, yeah, well, we can look to all kinds of unusual events to be popping off this year. It's something I really wanted to point to was when the United States was founded, the planet of Uranus was in Gemini. Okay. So what this means, Uranus, the seventh planet, the one that leans on its side. This planet is a planet of upheaval, of rebellion, and Aquarius is the sign of rebellion. All right. So, and it represents those things that bring rebellion about. It has everything to do with the collective masses of the people and the collective consciousness. It has everything to do with a nation or a group or groups and nations of people. All right. And looking away from it genophysically, pertaining to human beings, and we apply it societally to objects and things we see in the world, in our circumference, in our environment, right? It points to machinery, technology of every single sort, everything from a paperclip to the super drives that they use to convey the internet to folks globally. Okay, it points to electricity that is conducted by man through wires, as well as through the magnetic sphere in the form of lightning and what have you, in turbulent weather. So because this is a prominent year for that placement, the natal placement of Uranus in Gemini in the United States chart, we're going through what they call an Uranus return. And when planets return to their places, they're given more volume. Like in a band, when the guitar player or the bass player gets a solo, or the trumpet player gets a solo, or any one of the musicians get a solo, the rest of the band continues to play. But they're not making the grand stand. They're not making the noise that the solo artist is making. And this is how planetary returns occur. So the United States is in Uranus return. What does that mean in plain English? That we're going to see upheaval, demonstrations, drastic social changes, and societal norms take form in a manner that we have not expected nor have looked at for at least 84 years. Still there?
Yeah, I'm listening. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, these are the things that I was looking for at the beginning of the year. What I had not expected were I hadn't even seen it coming, man. It was like just far beyond my furthest imagination that they would be blowing up Tesla cars all over the place.
Mm.
And that was a precursor to the conflict between Elon Musk and Trump. So I came to the conclusion that Elon had to be a Leo rising because Trump has Mars in Leo. This year and every year after this one for the next 3 or 4 years, I would like to say 4 years, but I'm going to say 3 to keep myself safe. Okay. I already said 3 to 4 years. So the next 3 to 4 years, Trump is going to be very successful in his undertakings. Okay. If you look at his birth chart, which is 10:30 in the morning, everybody here that really does astrology, I hope you had your software up, because all you got to do is pull up June 14th, 1946 at 10:30 in the morning. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Trump was born in Queens, New York. But because he is functioning now from the seat of the capital of this nation, you should put the chart in Washington, D.C. All right? And when you add 72 days to that, let me see what that is real quick, because I ain't got it in my head, right? When you add 72 days to it, to June the 14th, 1946, you'll find that the planet of Venus is conjunct the ascendant perfectly in the location of Washington, D.C. And what does this mean for him? Well, it means that all executive decisions and acting capacities that he makes that has to do with that territory are going to work out for him regardless of the challenges that immediately appear. Venus is the planet of victory and success. Give me a second here. When we're looking at a chart, let's say we're doing a horary chart, which is a question that a person poses to the astrologer, and the astrologer will pull up a chart for the very moment that the question was asked and use that chart to answer the question without regard or any consideration whatsoever for the person's birth chart. Okay? If a person is to ask an astrologer, like, what does Venus progress to the ascendant mean? This is a year of promise for any human being, wicked, righteous, evil, good, benevolent, bad, handsome, or ugly. You understand? This is every human being looks forward to motions like this. As Trump will never have Venus project to progress to his ascendant using Nibod's formula again in his life, it'll be another 30 years before he gets a cuspal motion like this. You see what I'm saying? So this is part and partially the reason why I announced that I thought he was going to win the election, and predicted the election, because, like I said, Venus is promising. When a woman comes to me and says, when's the best year for me to have a baby? Or when's the best year for me to get married? Or when anyone asks, when is the best time for me to open a business? Or I'm going to the casino this month. I'm looking primarily for the Jupiter day and any midpoint between Jupiter and Venus, as well as the Venus planet. And more so Venus when it comes to money than Jupiter. Where Jupiter talks about good fortune and success in your undertaking, it doesn't necessarily have to manifest monetarily or materially, where Venus must, because Venus rules a material sign and a socially interaction. It governs all social interaction and gives us indication to the nature of all social interaction. And commerce happens to be one of those most engaged social interactions globally since the beginning of man's existence here. You see what I'm saying? So Venus, in other words, would be more indicative of material success. Let me get to what I was pulling up here first, okay?
All right. Shout out to everybody in the chat. We got Akhu going off. Show started out with a bang. The brother is doing his thing. Hey, Ross, so real quick, why you look for that? So do you think, since you got Trump's chart, is he going to finish the term? Because I'm hearing people saying, "Oh, Trump ain't going to make it out of there alive."
Yeah, he's going to finish the term. Yes, okay. Absolutely, yes.
All right.
And I'm basing this, this isn't just, I don't like Trump or dislike Trump. He has as much significance to me as a leaf blowing in the wind in Taiwan right now. Okay? So,
right now.
Yeah, right now. That's how concerned I am about him as a human being. I don't really care who they put in office. What I'm looking at, what I'm concerned about is how the society is going to unfold, and the pressures that we're going to be dealing with. We are going to go through economic upheaval. Canada just recently, in the last year or so, it may have been more than a year, converted all their money to plastic. They no longer use paper money. Okay? Trump taking the step to initiate all paper checks done away with and handled electronically is going to open the door to all commerce being handled electronically. Eventually, they're going to get rid of paper money altogether. Now, I don't believe that people are going to stop using it. Just like when they withdrew the gold standard and changed the way money was. People still kept them gold certificates. People still kept them promissory notes because they're worth money today. So if he shuts down the use of paper money, that money loses its value in the immediate market, but in the collector's market blows up. So don't be throwing your dollars away. You dig what I'm saying? That paper is only worth a fucking nickel in real life. And once they take it out of circulation or no longer have it, after 10 or 15 years, the value of that increases exponentially. Old, no longer used, out of circulation money is now an antique. Okay? So these are things where it looks negative. But in the long run, it's the United States trying to keep up with the rest of the world. As it stands, okay, now, because we're talking about Uranus and Aquarius, and we're talking about, we are in the age of Aquarius, and we are in a time right now where Uranus gets to have a lot of noise. So a lot of age of Aquarius advancements are going to occur. I've been looking at AI, okay? Now, and they're getting better rapidly, okay? It was only a year and a half ago that if you did some stuff like this on an AI photograph, it would bring it back to you. You only had 2 fingers. And if you made a video, you know, the hands, it would give you 7 and 8 fingers and what have you, right? Well, now they're getting videos where it's getting really hard to tell whether it's AI or not. You see, these advancements are coming during a super sub Gemini age within the overall age of Aquarius, causing communication and all devices involved in any kind of communication. And that's more than communication between people. This is communication between machines. This came about and was highlighted during this phase. This Gemini phase, micro age that I'm referencing, is going to be 15 years long. Trump is necessary to put in office for some reason. I haven't worked that reason out. I know that it's either for war and to condition the people to desire a softer character and perhaps maybe a woman. You see, his presidency will make the American public good and fresh and ready for a woman when he's done. You see what I'm saying? Because he's coming in with this iron hand shit, trying to restore America to a state that it was, the United States, pardon me, to a state that it was in back in the 80s and 90s, really. This is what I see. And where his ideas may be good for money on a corporate level, I don't know how that works for the common man, because AI is already beginning to push people out of certain jobs. People in tech are moving from cybersecurity to AI at drastic rates. You understand? Where cybersecurity was the biggest shit, now it's AI overnight. You said you had some questions for me, Lord.
Yeah. I was letting you do your thing. Tell me about, since we're talking so much about the United States, and I said I want to touch on some current events. What can you tell me, Rod, with Africa starting to wake up, Rod? We got some motion happening over there. What can you tell me?
Talking about Burkina Faso.
What's happening in the stars with the mighty continent of Africa, man? They waking up.
Well, indeed. And, you used the right phrase, all right? All the signs of the zodiac point to different mind states. Aries points to you in your war state, your frustrated, your angry state. Cancer points to you in your emotional state. Leo points to you in a composed state, right? So when we think about the ages, We're in the age of Aquarius, which is the age of rebellion. I mentioned this earlier in this very broadcast. It represents rebellion and social upheaval. Okay? Now, and because it pertains to groups of people and it pertains to freedom, liberty, and human rights and humanitarianism and things of this nature, during the age of Aquarius, during the sub age of Libra, and the micro age of Gemini, people are going to start to speak out about how they're being governed and what is fair and what is not fair. Okay? The great shift in the law occurred. See, I ain't trying to make this nigga seem prophetic because it ain't the character, it's the timing, right? It's the times for that. When Trump gets into office, that is Pluto in Aquarius in opposition to Leo. Okay? I said this a couple of years ago when it first peeked his head in Aquarius and came back out, or when it was on its way into Aquarius. I said, Pluto opposing Leo itself is like the sun in Scorpio, or Pluto opposing the sun, or the sun in Aquarius with Pluto is going to really bring it to the fore a lot. But Pluto in Aquarius opposing Leo has a lot to do with the way we're raising our children. And I was like, because also Aquarius is the sign of the unconventional, the socially unacceptable, and the transfer, the process of things moving from socially unacceptable to socially acceptable, and or those things that are socially acceptable becoming socially acceptable. That whole idea of social acceptability, whether accepted or not, has to do with Aquarius. So because Pluto deals with sexuality, the first thing I said was, we're going to see a lot of these people growing sick and tired of the LGBTQ agenda and how it's taking such lengths. There's going to be mad pushback when Pluto gets into Aquarius. And I said to my wife, I said, because it opposes Leo, this has to do with children. So a lot of child abuse, a lot of child molestation issues, and the way we socially engage our children and raise and treat our children is going to come to the fore, like seriously, and maybe not in a positive light. And what do we see now? Parents killing their kids like it ain't nothing. Perverts getting caught for child molestation, child porn. All this stuff is like really heightening. And in my mind, it's like the band in the background playing. That shit always goes on. There's always some child abuse, some neglect and mistreatment and murder of children, infanticide and things of this nature, right? Infanticide. And I said, but it doesn't get attention like it's going to get attention while the planets are in the signs that point to these things. And that's the real issue. Africa has been oppressed since the Punic Wars. The Europeans and Asian minor countries have infiltrated the culture and have been oppressing and imposing their policies and customs and ways on the people of the continent of Africa. And it is, Africa reached its peak during the age of Leo. I mean, it was at a super peak, where they was building pyramids. Leo was like from 11,507 BC to 9,000 BC and such, right? So this is where all the pyramids were built globally and stuff like that. So that culture flourished back then. Okay, in the age of Aquarius, it was a sun culture. They revered the sun. They used sun symbolism, and for kingship, they used the cosmic model for the hierarchy of their government. Okay, this all came about during the age of Leo, and thus it was peaking. It was global. It was a world order. Well, the world order, after 12,960 years, has flipped on itself 180 degrees. And we have the sign that the sun rules is setting in this concept. And the sign that the rule is monsters and technology and man-made things. And the unusual and unconventional and socially unacceptable is rising. And so what happens to as this has been occurring, really, the age of Aquarius since the 1453, since the 15th century. Okay, we've been in the age of Aquarius. They've been trying to destroy the culture of the Sun people at an exponential rate, exponentially. Okay, so and for people that want to believe that racism is going away, it has never not been here. Okay, and it's never going anywhere. We're never going to have peace on earth and goodwill. We're all going to be sitting at a fucking Thanksgiving table like Charlie Brown, because you're going to have the nigga on the other side of the table. You dig? This is our planet. And every country has been infiltrated by mutants. I mean, people don't like to hear that terminology. Okay? But everybody knows that the most original people on this planet all look like those brothers that are on the Andaman Islands. And this was so no matter where you went on the planet. It was a black planet. And because of the inclination of the poles, nothing that wasn't black could live on it. So when people talk about, man, we from Africa, we from Australia, we from Asia, we from America, 100,000 years ago, if we had a picture of the globe or the map, you wouldn't even be able to recognize North America. You wouldn't be able to recognize Africa. See, we can't say where we from because there was land where there's now the Indian Ocean. And there is now land where there was an ocean in Salt Lake, with Salt Lake in Nevada or Utah, wherever Salt Lake City is, right? Nevada, here in the United States. Is it Salt Lake City, Utah, or Colorado, or Nevada? I don't know. It's in the mountains.
Utah.
Okay, yeah. So it's out west, right? That was an ocean, an inland sea or ocean at one time. So whatever's living on the plains in America now and in the mountains wasn't living there then, because all that shit was underwater. So when we talk about and we want to argue and take pride about where we from this planet as far as we know. Okay? And we got, how can you say this? Oral tradition and say we came from the sky. We got oral tradition and say we came straight out the water. We got oral tradition and said we came out from underneath the earth and started living on the surface. I believe all the above is true to some extent. Okay? I believe all that. I accept all that as a possible absolutivity. All right? The point in the matter is man is evolving. Proof of the matter is that as the sun sign in the great age clock sets, so does the culture of the sun people set. Okay, I don't like that, but that's really what it is. You know, somebody said, man, you know, them Europeans came to America and they just decimated everybody over here with disease and it was genocide and they're trying to hide that and they don't want us to. And I'm like, you know, the Most High has a way of making his plan, the zodiac, unfold. You know, no matter where you look, when a thing is worn out, it is wiped out. So I'm calling my ancestors worn out. No, I'm calling the ways of the world order that they were living by was worn out. It was inevitable. America had not just gotten invaded by Europeans. 200 or 300 years before the Europeans got here, the Asiatic, the Siberians ran up in here on the Mound people. Okay, so there were all kinds of incursions happening and invasions happening all over because it was time for us to step out of that culture. It is the same right now for those people that refuse to adapt to the computer age. Nigga, pretty soon ain't gonna be no TV shows for you to turn on. Just like cassette tape. When cassette tapes came out, we were all using 8-track. Niggas wanted to hold on to that 8-track, to the point my uncle still has his right now. We can go in his attic and find that shit. You see what I'm saying? So people don't want to let go of these old trends. But he, as much as he loves those 8-track cannot find a single player, 8-track player in nary a pawn shop anywhere in the country, right? So this is how the collective consciousness of humanity moves forward. A lot of the things that we come up with that are actually useful remain throughout the ages. For example, meditation is a Gemini act. Yoga is a Sagittarian act. Well, during the age of Gemini, when Sagittarius was setting and Gemini was rising in the age conceptualization, mental development and contorting the body came together as a means by which to facilitate some form of enlightenment. Okay? Now, that was developed 7,000, 9,000 BC or before. Okay? Or before then. And it just was written down or was canonized into a solid practice in the culture that we have received it from. Either way it goes, it appears to be Gemini Sagittarian. Well, the age of Gemini is fucking over, though. It's been over for like the last 8,000, 7,000 years or so, more than that, 11,000 years or so, right? So when you understand that, we still use writing. Writing came to us in the age of Gemini. We still domesticate animals and teach them to respond to verbal command like we did in the age of Gemini. See, that'll never go away because this is an ultimate useful property, okay? But those things about the age of Gemini that were useless have been wiped out, and there is no remnant of it. So when we look at today, and we're like, oh man, look at how technology is overtaking the culture of every people globally. Man, they getting ready to bring the internet to the Amazon, to motherfuckers that ain't never seen a fucking computer. They gonna see the internet for the first time. You see, they getting ready to primitivate. I'm making words up as I go. They're gonna bring these people out of their old world state into the new world, to the modern world, okay? This is an inevitability, and this year happens to highlight or put some focus on that observation, on that, on the fact that we are constantly evolving and now in a technological age, taking off and doing away with the old world order. This is why the Europeans were able to come and bring disease. Okay, in the age of Pisces, when Europe and Asia dealt with disease, America was blessed. We didn't have to deal with that. We dealt with the cultivation of drugs like ayahuasca and marijuana, heroin, cocaine. We dealt with these things while the whole world was over there killing each other. We took some of that over there, okay? We developed pharmaceutical science over here. We developed architectural science. So, but what we had not developed was the idea that the Most High didn't drink blood. You see? These people were still performing human sacrifice, practicing the religion of Moloch, really. You know, that you hear about in the Bible. It's the same thing, just a different form here in America. Giving babies to the gods, thinking that the baby would that the gods would appreciate the granting of that life as a sacrifice and allow the people to live on, right? Well, this type of thinking was not going to continue to flourish at the rate of the rest of the world was flowing and going. Christianity and Islam, Buddhism, and humanitarian concepts that far exceeded the humanitarianism cultivated here in this culture allowed us to get wiped out. So it is the same in smaller scale. It is identical in smaller scale. So, you know, technology is going to take over the economic situation pretty soon. I ain't even got to be in 10 years, all right, that we all going to have our money on a card, okay? All your shit is on a card like a credit card, all right? Because it's more efficient. They're already doing it in some countries, so it's just bound to overcome. It's bound to happen. big metropolises such as America are difficult. We're going to run into a lot more public demonstration, aka riots and rebellion, because the course of the country is going to go through drastic change during his term and the next term. I don't know what got y'all thinking that Trump is some serious villain. They're all villains. And they all continue each other's policies to some extent, even when they compete with each other.
Right.
You know? Yeah, because if I put a legacy in place, just because I lose the election, that what I put in place is still rolling. And the next nigga has to manage that efficiently. He can't just come and say, okay, we're no longer paying attention to that. So if you look now, everybody think it's a joke. the war in Israel right now that they're waging on the Palestinians has spread to Iran. Iran and Israel, as we speak, are exchanging all kinds of fireplay, killing each other like hell, okay? This is the excuse that the United States has been looking for since whose administration, right? Since the last 5 or 6 administrations, to go over there in Iran and really democratize the place. Because that's what they're also doing in the age of Aquarius in the Libra Dwada Shaman. It used to be we would conquer the United States. The United States would conquer a country or infiltrate, coup d'etat the country, and they would put a dictator in there. Or they would install a new king like they did in Saudi Arabia back in the day, right? So now they wipe out whatever kind of government you got and enforce a democratic voting system type of government. They've been wanting to do this in every Muslim country since the Crusades. See, and when people fail to realize too, these conflicts, these modern day conflicts that we see and engage in and see engaged in constantly on the internet and on TV and all that shit goes back to the Punic War, okay? When the Italians and the Greeks, the Dorians and the people that came there and usurped the Etruscans came to power, the Latins, okay? They wanted prevalence in the world too. And they wanted prevalence over the Mediterranean. This is what started the black-white wars in America. I mean, in the world, okay? Punic War was European against African. That's where, and the animosity started way before then. But the clash rose and finally cemented itself during the Punic War. So if you understand that, you want to understand how racism is and why it is. It has everything to do with the control of territory. Okay? Everything. Because even within the bounds of Africa itself, where people are at conflict with another, because some of these people are from India and Asia. You see? What was I going to say? Variability creates diversity. Diversity creates separation. Separation creates animosity and hostility. And this is the nature of humanity. And what people really don't think, like, you know, they want this world to be as peaceful as the spiritual realm is after you're dead. Good luck with that. You know, we came down here for diversity. We came down here for the extremes of good and bad, hot and cold, wet and dry, soft and warm, cold and wet and such and such. Because there is no material existence without those extremes. And no sailor develops these skills. No soul is going to evolve to develop its divinity without dealing with the challenges of the material world, because there ain't no pussy in heaven, man. Ain't no war in heaven. Ain't no conflict. Ain't nothing. Okay? Everything we get down here. Okay? So, and we can't wait to get here. Because look at us. We coming in by the millions every year. By hundreds of thousands a day. So it's obvious that this is the place to be to me. Okay? Pardon the sensibilities of everyone else who may not agree. This is just where my mind is. So when I look at the astrology, I see a constant spiraling pattern going on. And each loop of that spiral is called a volute, right? Each volute is composed of the same 12 energies. It's just done at a different place and time. So we can see this pattern repeating over and over and over again. I hope I conveyed that.
No, definitely. Yeah, definitely conveyed that excellently, my brother. Um, Let me ask you a quick question. People compare with when they see what's going on now. They a lot of people say, "Oh man, this is the end of an era. This is the end of the current world as we know it." They use words like the global reset. Earth is gonna there's gonna be a new Earth. They use new terms. I want to ask you, what was going on in the cosmos the last time when we had a great flood that devastated the planet? I think they said it was 11,000 years ago. Where
Yeah,
was what was popping? Yeah,
there's more than one flood, guys. See,
but
this is
that was the most recent one. They said 11,000 years ago.
well,
They
the
said,
one you're talking about is the flood in 9,600 BC, which is 11,000, 12,000 years ago, as a result of the Younger Dryas.
yeah,
That was supposedly the flood that raised sea levels globally. But there are floods that occurred. The Gulf of Mexico was a deep green valley at one time, according to the Mesoamericans. And that was the flood that people want to say is Noah's flood, in my opinion. Okay, the flooding of. But what about the Mediterranean? It was not always water. And what about the Red Sea? It was not always a sea. You understand? It was a river at one time. It is now a fucking sea. So when you talk about the flood narrative, this is a multi era, like it happened over the course of like 2 or 3 thousand years, in different spots everywhere continually. So while the water levels were rising. So when we talk about the flood, you have to be more specific to the location. But the grand flood that occurred at the end of the Younger Dryas was being touted the most as the flood. So I will assume that that's the one you're referencing. And so, what were you going to ask me about that?
what was going on at that time period? I want to compare it to what's going on now and see if there's any alignments going on.
Okay, the beginning of the ice age started like in the age of Virgo, or even before then, it started getting colder because this is a product of the poles of the Earth tilted. So when we don't have history before 5,000 BC, thanks to the Roman Catholic Church and biodegradable material. All right, we don't have a record other than the geologic record to say what was going on, and we have the oral traditions of people globally who encase a memory of that day through their folklore. As far back as I can go back is to the flood and after. Okay, astrologically speaking, the age of Leo was supposed to be the age of kings, where gods walked the earth and all of this other stuff. I don't know how literally to take that stuff. You see what I'm saying? So I don't dabble in it long. I dwell where I can come with material facts. So what I do realize is that the oral traditions all over Asia, the oral traditions all over the Americas, the oral traditions all over Africa, 9,000 years ago, were about coming out of the water. Okay, most of them. I can't say all of them because some of them have sky origins, some of them have terra, have earth origins. Okay, but most of them that have come down to us and that are readily available to us in the libraries and on the internet and what have you, begin with a watery beginning, even in the Bible. Okay, this is the age of Cancer when the flood occurred. I do believe that they gave the sign of Cancer a water sign, and gave it rulership over floods in retrospect, not or how can you say prior to experiencing the flood. They were like, this is when it was flooded. That was the age of the flood. So we're going to call this sign water. And we're going to see how often that indication, planets rolling through that sign, give us indication of water and what have you, right? After the age of Cancer, what you have is people recovering from that. People creating their histories and their oral traditions right there at the end of that flood. Because whatever had happened to that society, the water washed it away. So these people were in small bands, small groups, Gemini, in couples and in twos and things of this nature. And even their oral tradition represents the, how can I say, mimics, repeats the astrological pattern, all right? Like they say in the Bible, which begins in the age of Cancer, they say, and the Spirit of God moved across the face of the waters, and all was formed, well, without form and void. Okay, I'm paraphrasing here, okay? Well, that's a stellar symbolism that they're talking about there, okay? Because during the age of Cancer, the age of the flood, the age of the water, there was no pole star. So darkness was upon the face of the deep. What was close to the poles was the constellation of the swan that the Egyptians held as a vulture and that the American Indians held as a spirit bird. Thus, when it says, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters and the face of the deep, and it was null and void, and the earth was without form and void, they're talking about their astrological event. Okay? And the astrological event marks a 3,703-year phase of time. Because there are only 7 constellations in the north, which the ancients adhered to that region more so than they do now. Okay? Now we have technology. Now we have compasses. Now we have gadgets and landmarks and a common knowledge of the directions, where back 9,000 BC, 10,000, 11,000 BC, this knowledge was for the privileged. You see? It was held against the profane. It was hidden. It was only used by the elite and only shows up where the elite made and left a mark. Okay? So when they talk about the flooding, they're talking about the age of Cancer. I do believe that the earth went through a water displacement. However it happened, whether it happened by water gushing out of the center of the earth, the volume of ice and glaciers on this planet melting, I believe all of that contributes to it. And I'm not going to pick one narrative over another because nobody really knows how it happened. We just know that it happened. So I don't get into the how it happened. But what I see is after that, after the water, in every oral tradition comes the domestication of animals and the refinement of the arts and sciences, and especially writing and communication. During the age of Gemini, Africa developed a form of communication that was the drums. Okay, so they can speak over long distances. And when we look in books like Signs and Symbols of Primordial Man by Albert Churchwood, we find testimony of explorers, European explorers, that went into the interior of Africa and saw things that you niggas wouldn't believe today. Like, for example, they said they had to be guided from place to place by scouts. And they couldn't walk through this territory without scouts from this territory. And when it was time for them to move on to the next province, these scouts will use modern day Masonic symbols to communicate with each other. The North American Indian had a whole sign language thing that was from coast, understood by all the tribes from coast to coast, though their dialects are numbered in the hundreds, numbered into the thousands. They all understood the sign language. So this evolved in the age of Gemini. All of the ideologies that we use in our religions, I don't care if it's Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, atheism. All of this came to be recorded and developed from the age of Gemini moving forward. By the 2,160 years later, we get to the age of Taurus. We're cultivating agriculture and breeding cattle. Okay? By the time we get to the age of Aries, we're smelting iron. Okay, we done stepped through the Bronze Age. We smelting iron, and the art of war is a global phenomenon now, not just happening in scarce areas. Okay, and I'm talking about full-scale war, armies, not this village against that village. 200 niggas against 200 niggas over this stream, over the fish in the stream of Buffalo. We talking about armies of 100,000, 200,000, 300,000. This is age of Aries thing, okay? The dispersal, because we got evidence that iron was used back in the age of Taurus, back in the age of Gemini. We don't have evidence of it being used globally and being widespread until the age of Aries. And Aries is said to be the ruler of iron, okay? So man started implementing the usage of iron, and war spread globally everywhere. But we are now in the age of Aquarius, okay? So it's about nationhood. They want to make this whole planet one nation, global, one central global government. And believe me, it's going to get there, okay? Because during the age of Aquarius, which opposes Leo, it's only proper that you have one government to rule all people. And because that's a natural inclination for the indication of this age, there are going to be factions for the next 2,000 years attempting to facilitate just that. I'm kind of dry. You gotta poke me again.
Yo, Rod, do you believe in reincarnation?
To death.
Do you think have you used, like, I know there's so many different systems, spiritual systems. There's a spiritual system, there's a brother named Q Reeves that called he comes on a platform past life regressions, where he's able to look into, I think that he taps into the subconscious to look into past lives.
I know a person who claims to be able to do that. I know them personally.
Yeah. Have you ever used astrology or your branch of science to look into your past life?
I have imagined what my past lives have been based upon the doctrine that I believe, based upon the astrological doctrine, that I believe the doctrine of reincarnation comes from, right? And what I'm referencing is called Neuronia, Naronia, okay? Naronia, Neuronia, okay? It references the Naros, Naros, which is a 600-year, 19-day cycle of time, okay? And it is called the most perfect cycle because it represents a means by which to measure trends that occur every 600 years. Here goes an example. They say that every 600 years, a reformer comes to reform and advance and expand the spirituality of mankind. Okay? So you had Siddhartha Gautama. 600 years later, you got Confucius. 600 years later, you got Moses. 600 years later, you got Muhammad. Jesus. 600 years after that, you got Muhammad. 600 years later, you got all of these other religious movements and so-called prophets that they give. So my idea was, if they believe that a reformer comes back every 600 years, then the conditions under which a reformer is required to come back must also happen every 600 years. So it ain't just about catching the cycle of the Redeemer. Everybody got to come back every 600 years. I'm like, this got to apply to everybody. So what I did was I started looking for my duplicate chart in 600-year periods. So I found two of them. 1,800 years ago, October the 30th, before 1965, and 1,800 years after 1965, October the 30th. All three of these charts look very similar with regards to the inner planets. And where they're not identical, there is a theory and it is a theory, that it takes the 4.32 billion years, which is a Mahayuga, right? It takes 4.32 billion years for the entire solar system to reset itself. I don't know how true that is, okay? Because it's a constantly expanding phenomenon, right? But along with that theory is the idea that eventually it's going to start to come back together. But at any rate, if that is true, then even if it ain't me coming back 1,800 years from, it's a motherfucker that's a lot like me, and a nigga who look like me, gonna have scars in similar places that have scars, gonna have general attitude, projection that I have, and this is for every human being. So this is the reason why I accept. Now, I have recently been studying a whole bunch of theories, astrological theory pointing to reincarnation. You know, the brother A.A. Rashid, God bless that brother, man. Okay, he already blessed him for real. Okay, phenomenal intellect. His brother is in California coming across books I never heard of. So he'll call me and be like, yo, God, you heard of this book? Woo, 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 woo. And he'll send it to me. You understand? So he sent me this book, Hermetic Astrology by Robert Powell. And that has a very interesting reincarnation factor in it that I've been exploring. I haven't fully explored it. I doubt I'll ever be able to do that. But what they were stating in the book is that Steiner used to use astrological alignment and to find these alignment cycles in later charts. For example, they say the position of Saturn in your chart in this life and the position of the sun in this life were switched in your last life.
Wow.
See? Yeah. So then there's another one coming out of this book that, okay, let's say I got Uranus at 0 degrees Aries and the moon at 0 degrees Libra. Well, in my next life, that opposition I'll have that somewhere else in the birth chart. But the opposition between the moon and Uranus is what you're looking for. You know, my thing about that is, while I accept the idea of reincarnation, I do not believe yet, I am not convinced yet, that anyone is going to be able to pull up a birth chart and say, oh, this is what she was in the last life. Pow. Because you should know everybody's last life. You should know your own, too. If you know mine, you better know your own. And you better be convincing. So, which is not going to be. I really don't. I believe in reincarnation. I don't believe that the human being is capable of pinpointing lifetimes successfully or successively.
Indeed.
I know I took a long time to answer that question. But
No, it was thorough. It was definitely thorough.
Yeah.
So what do you see? You talked about Trump trying to bring back, this old style of America. What do you see with the immigration issue that a lot of people aren't pleased with? According to the stars, what do you see happening in the next, I don't know, 5 years or whatever? Where's this immigration thing going to go, you think?
Well, first, let me say that I explored immigration altogether. Okay. Immigration has been a thing since Teddy Roosevelt, even before him. Every president uses it as a means. And what it really is this. United States is a whoring ass country, right? In other words, bring me all your downtrodden. We'll get them niggas a job. We'll pimp them niggas out for you, you know? So send us your war-torn, your prisoners, send your outcasts. Send us all that aren't outcasts. See, what they do is they give work permits. And you're supposed to renew these work permits. But like normal Everybody doesn't want to go through the rigmarole. I'm here now. Fuck that shit. I don't need to go down to the office. I mean, I'm here sleeping every day. What they have done is gone back and found all the people that are living here that haven't renewed the permits, and they're kicking them out of here. Okay, every foreigner isn't getting kicked out of here. Why is that? Every immigrant isn't getting kicked out. See, and the reason why it seems deplorable and horrible is because they're separating families. But really, it's like when the niggas go to jail for being pissy drunk, walking down the street. You should have stayed your ass home and drank. You know goddamn well there are police in the street. You're a fool if you think staggering in an S-curl in the middle of the street, that ain't going to get you in trouble. It's the same way with immigration. All them people needed to do was renew their immigration card. Those who didn't are being carried out of here, and nobody likes it. But nobody wants to say that's what it is. When a friend of mine, a student of mine, is from the Bahamas, lives in Canada now. He lives in Canada because he bought land there. So because he owns land, he has automatic entitlement to residency, right? But they can ship his ass back to Bermuda anytime they get good and fucking ready. Well, every president does this because there's a budget balancing going on. Trump did all that shit because he said, we can legally undo all this immigration, but using this immigration policy, that'll give us crazy money to do this. So that's why they're doing it. Go do that, take all this money from that. We're going to use all that money for this over here. You see, this is what government does. They just don't like the way Trump is doing it. So to answer your question shortly, Trump ain't doing nothing that Obama, Clinton, Biden, Reagan, Carter, Nixon, Ford, all of them did this. So it only happens like once every 4 years. It looks like a big thing, but this is normal for the United States. So where do I think it's going to go? Right back to where it was. When they get to a point that they need a bunch of workers, they're going to let a bunch of them in here. When it gets to the point that they want to balance the budget again, they're going to push them back out of here. And it's a constant in and out, just like prison. They want that recidivism. You think they send you to jail because they don't want you to go? They send you, and they love that recidivism. They keep that industry going. This keeps the border patrol going, keeps the government with something to do. So there's never not going to be an issue with immigration in this country. It's even happening in other countries when people just up and want to relocate cross borders and they get removed back. There's an immigration issue in every country right now. That was the great alien invasion. You know, like they were talking about, some CIA agent was talking about how there's going to be an alien invasion. The government's going to stage this alien invasion using Project Bluebeam and what have you, right? And I said to my wares, people ain't stupid enough for that yet. They need people to be really, really, really stupid to believe a Project Bluebeam. They can make it believable by detonating real bombs and all that stuff. But there are going to be people that just ain't going for that. So what do they do instead? All of the European countries, was y'all paying attention? Or was y'all just listening to the loud noise? All of the European countries, including America, had an influx of illegal aliens. They was just letting them niggas in like crazy. That right there show you like crazy that they was up to something, letting all them people in. There was no noise when all these people are crossing the border. All these people are robbing. They took over a housing project in Colorado here in the United States. You see it all over the internet with niggas from North Africa and West Africa were attacking and being attacked by the Europeans that they were encountering and what have you. Some of that stuff was uncalled for, like this here. But what that did was create tension amongst the citizens, and it created a sense of insecurity that the immediate response is always unity. So in order to unify the white people of America, or to unify the people that think like them, right? Or let's not even put color in it, to get everybody to turn Republican. They let the Democrats sour the shit by bringing all those immigrants in. That was the alien invasion. They had everybody feeling like it's not safe because they got all these aliens here. So it creates a need for government. You see what I'm saying? It creates a need for solidarity, for national solidarity. We got to get them foreigners out of here. So I believe that it's a hoax. It's a ploy to generate specific types of unity by letting the foreigners in, causing that panic, and then just getting rid of all of them once we get everybody thinking the same. They did the same thing with the Patriot Act in 9/11. You know, fuck, we can't get these people to violate their privacy. We can get them to beg for it. If we bomb the World Trade Center, they'll be begging us to surveil them. You see? So I believe that the great influx of immigrants was that, to mobilize the people to a political agenda, because now they're undoing it. Now that they've succeeded in reaching that mindset that they're looking for, they put them niggas out. Put them out. You see? Right. And they can always use them again.
Give me some questions. I want to take some questions from the family. We passed the hour mark. We're about an hour 15. I want to give you the opportunity to ask Ross some questions. So put some questions in the chat as we wait on the questions to pop up. Rod, tell the people how they could get at you. I see you got a number on the screen. Let them know how they could contact you, Rod.
Okay, you could call me any day between 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time by this number, 516-881-6992. And I'm taking donations, okay? Because my kids is going beyond seconds now. They all get thirds and shit now. Because, being a parent only gets more and more expensive, okay?
Oh, shit.
Because as your children grow, they eat more, they want to do more, they want to have more. You understand? And so I'm taking all donations now. I'm begging, okay? The Egoist Media LLC. If you want to make a donation, go right ahead.
All right.
You don't need to drop no specific amount. Any help will do. Or buy a reading. I prefer that you buy a reading from me than donate, really. Come to me. You get in my class if you don't want to stay a perpetual client. Get in my class.
Indeed. Let's get to I seen one question. Give me some questions, y'all. I only seen one. Let me get to this first one. Are the stars a part of the simulation?
That's assuming that I subscribe to the simulation ideology, right? And if I did, then yes, the answer is yes. See, this is a simulation. Everything in existence is composed of atoms. Atoms have a nucleus that spin around at a rate, and electrons and or neutrons that also spin around that nucleus, creating a vacuum or vibratory frequency that gives a sense of materiality to this place. That is the simulation in my book. I don't believe that we are like the Matrix. That's a movie. That we're acting and through an avatar, and really we're locked in some chamber somewhere with all of our vitals being taken care of. I don't believe that. So I don't know what you mean by the simulation. It says the Most High's simulation.
All right. Next question. Which Hermetic astrology book does Ra have?
I have Hermetic Astrology, Volume 1 and 2 by Robert Powell. In Volume 2, he gets into the unprovable shit, astrology about reincarnation. But they are trying to rationalize it. And he relies on Rudolf Steiner's work. So ultimately, you're going to want to read some of Steiner's shit too, if you want to play with the numbers that they're using and the features that they're using to determine what is reincarnational indication and what is
not. Any update on regeneration with, what's that word? How you say that? Exon? How do you say that word? You see it on the screen, Rob? Xenon?
I don't know what xenon bulbs are.
Right.
I'd have to look that up. I don't know anything about xenon bulbs. I know how to
Um,
pronounce xenon though. But
somebody said, "What's up? Reparations for Black the spiritual world on." You gotta get your grammar right, y'all. I don't.
no, I understand what they're asking for.
Okay.
You know, um, a couple things right there. Reparations for black and the spirituality of our people, basically, is what he's focused on. I take
Right.
that. Right? This is what I understand. So, reparations. See, we you have to be able to identify yourself all the way back to get reparations. See, they really by disenfranchising the people of their identity, they were able to curtail the degree of reparations. So the strategy that I'm using is my lineage. I'm studying my lineage so that I can actually make a claim based on family and provable stuff. Because reparations, there's no such thing as black people in love. See, black people hate to hear that. You can't go up in court. I'm black. I'm a descendant of slaves, so y'all owe me. Which slave? Which state? Which county? See, you get all that information, there goes your reparations. So the journey to receiving reparations is going to be based on our ability to prove in court, to make a claim, and a provable claim in court to referencing our right to those reparations. You see? Because there's no such thing as a black American. So you go in there and tell me I'm a Negro, I'm a black American, and y'all owe me money. You ain't getting shit. What plantation was your folks on? What state deprived you of your property? Where was the land that your ancestors had? Where was it? So you're going to have to do some genetics, and genetics is a hoax. You're going to have to do some kind of genetics that's going to connect you to a tribe head, and you're going to have to do the work that's necessary to paper-wise connect you to that tribe, and then you have a foundation for reparations.
All right. All right. Let's get
When you say reparations, you're using government remedy for government fuck up.
Oh, let's see. Hold on. Let me get to this. There's a couple of these. All right. How do I? They want to know, how do they find the classes you have?
You call me at this number, 516-881-6992, any day between 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Call me at that phone number. If you don't catch me when you call, understand I'm busy as fuck, man. And I'm a one-man company, right? So you might have to call back, because when you call, I'm on the phone with somebody else. So you might have to try more than once to reach me. But when you reach me, you state your intention. I want to study cosmophysics. I'm going to make sure that you understand what you're coming into. This is not typical astrology. This is my brand, what I've developed from the astrological practice. So it's not going to be the same as what you read in your astrology book. Okay, I promise you it's much more efficient. But nonetheless, it ain't going to be what you got typically from your astrology book. So it requires a serious student mindset, because we're doing research. You get homework in my class. And niggas that don't do homework get expelled unequivocally. I don't have no problem with booting anybody that wastes my time. You know, I'm an old man now. How much time you think I got left here? Right? So if you're serious about studying it and you're diligent, come on, man. You don't have to be super intelligent. I'll make a concession for that. But you must be thirsty. You must. So all you need to do is call me and express interest. And be serious as a motherfucker. Be serious as hell.
All right, let's get to. I got one super chat today, so I want to thank the Aquarius Theory, and their question is: with this Jupiter in Cancer squaring Saturn, Neptune in Aries, what are your thoughts on the current events setting the stage for the next 12 months?
That's deep, because it depends. I'm a genothliacal astrologer, so the first thing I go is what are people go to is what are people gonna go through, right? And for those people that have a good alignment of planets in water and earth signs, regardless of the other planets, if you have a good foundation in water and earth, this transit through Cancer by Jupiter is going to be remarkably rewarding or opportunity offering. You're going to get the opportunity to expand your base of operation. Depends on where Cancer falls in your birth chart. You understand? And for people who have a lot of planets in the cardinal signs, and that's what you're referencing here, okay? The Saturn, Neptune, and Aries is a cardinal sign. Jupiter and Cancer is a cardinal sign. This points to the most material manifestation, first of all, because they're in cardinal signs. They're in angular signs, okay? You understand that first. So now you analyze what Jupiter is in harsh aspect, an uneasy aspect to Saturn and Neptune. Saturn and Neptune and Aries talks about the military globally for humanity, okay? We're going to get more into biological weapons. You're going to start to see that a lot more. Yeah. Okay, I can't do nothing about that, right? So you're going to see that a lot more than we have been. I mean, it's hard to say in the United States where we're at war every year, okay? But that's not true. The conflicts and the battles and the skirmishes is what they're calling are not full-fledged declarations of war, okay? Where when you catch somebody from that country in this country, you can lock their ass up. See, that's war, okay? And that's not necessarily conflict. We could be in conflict with this country and the citizens of that country be here untouched, unscathed, economically, socially, or any other way, right? But when there's war, there's going to be some declarations going on. So I'm referencing official war, which I believe we're going to be in before Trump leaves office. Okay? So, and because Jupiter amplifies things, okay? And you know how people say you're doing too much for no reason. See, that's a Jupiter action right there. So, international relations are also given indication by Jupiter. And because of that square, they're going to be using ill excuse because Neptune represents deception. So it's not going to be for the reason that they say it is. It's going to be for whatever reason they've been agendaing since the Shah took over Iran. They've been wanting to get in there since the Shah got deposed, since the Islamists took it over. So, and because Neptune and Saturn in Aries talks about jihad, y'all, religious war is Neptune and in Aries. With Saturn there, talks about a whole new organization, a whole new regiment, a whole new task or division or feature to be dealt with regards to this so-called war on terror, which ain't nothing but the Crusades, Muslims against Christians.
Indeed.
So what do I think is going to manifest? And Saturn, Neptune, and Aries talks about religious fanatics and religious clerics. Okay, the killing and execution of religious clerics, taking advantage. The United States is a Cancer country. Okay, so Jupiter and Cancer is good for the United States. They're gonna make some strides in them conflicts going on in the Middle East this year, and Africa. As long as I need to look at Ibrahim Traore's chart again, okay, this is one of his most dangerous years. And I believe if he can get through this and the next 3 years, he's good to go. But he'd have to be very well insulated because they're not going to let it go. They want him out of there. You knew that the first indication of them wanting him out of there was made when a general that ain't never been in Burkina Faso. They never been in the National Reserves of Burkina Faso, accused Ibrahim Traore of using the nation's gold to pay Russia to protect them.
Indeed.
We know that once that negative campaign starts, this is how the devil works. They tarnish your reputation until they feel they have enough momentum with that act to take your life. They did it. They've done it several times. He would have to seriously insulate himself, which I believe he's doing very well.
Okay. Let's get to the next super chat question. How would you interpret the North Node Leo in the fourth house?
So I assume Taurus is rising. See, the fourth house. Is it the fourth sign in the chart? North Node in Leo talks about you needing to learn to compose. Your purpose on this planet is to learn to compose yourself. Now, to what capacity? I don't know. If you're a songwriter, if it's talking about personal composition, you know how you express yourself. If it's talking about and all of that really is pertinent. All right, that's the North Node in Leo. You're here to learn how to learn composition and how to execute your intent. You want to call it will if you want, right? How to execute your will and how to do so in the most administrative manner. Okay, so even in the hood where you got to treat and be fair with everybody and settle disputes for people. Okay, in the fourth place has something to do with the lineage and the domestic situation. So you properly learn how to do this, or were exposed to experiences with one of the parents that actually molded you into that to where it is a constant with you now. And I know you're asking about yourself here. Your purpose on this planet is to learn how to compose your emotion. Is one way to put that. Okay. Purpose, North Node, compose Leo, fourth cusp, your emotional standing. How to deal with your mother and the women in your family and women, period. Fourth house.
Okay.
Leo, being told what to do. I got you being administrative as fuck. Self-autonomous as fuck with the North Node in Leo. You don't like to be told what to do. You didn't like your parents telling you what to do. Too badass. I don't know what aspects that though. So give me a call. You want further insight into it. I'll give you 5 minutes.
Right. Okay. We're gonna do 2 more questions, family. Then we're gonna get out of here. We got one more super chat, and then I'll get to a regular question. As it pertains to the revolving door theory with incarceration, do you feel astrology was used to determine how much time one gets based on the crime?
I don't know, but it works out like that every time. And what do I mean by that? Okay. I did 12 years in prison, right? I didn't learn predictive astrology until I was 22 years old. All right. So I got locked up when I was 18. Right. And Saturn went direct by progress the day I got locked up. You know, and the whole time I'm blaming the judge. You know, I found out later that the judge was a Pisces, and I got Saturn in Pisces. And I went to prison, got sentenced, Saturn, to Pisces, to prison, by a Pisces, in all black robe. You know, he was a black judge too, you know. So whatever happens to a person is in the chart, including the way the system treats you in prison, okay? Like the way it starts in the courtroom. I broke this down before, but I can run through it real quick, okay? The moon represents the boat, the waters of life, right? So when you're born, and they make your birth certificate. They get your mother, the moon, to sign Mercury, your birth certificate, Venus, to encapsulate or control your sovereignty, the sun. And they enforce this, Mars, with laws made in the higher halls of government, Jupiter, to deprive you, Saturn, of your freedom, Uranus, unbeknownst to you, Neptune, for the rest of your motherfucking life, man. Pluto. All right? So, yeah, they use astrology. Yes. You know?
Right. Last question. This was a real good one. Make sure y'all share this video. This was a real good one tonight, family. Let's see. I see a lot of comments. Jacqueline, thank you for the super chat.
And it was really deep while you doing that. So when I was in, I fell down a flight of steps while I was handcuffed. So I had a lawsuit. And the lawyer that took my case for the lawsuit openly said to me, yo, what's your rising sign? Do you know? And I'm like, why are you asking? She said, because before I take a client on, I want to know their sign. I want to see that injury in their chart. Really? I said, well, you see Uranus, which is tumbling and falling, right? In opposition to Saturn, right? She's like, yeah. I said, well, I fell. Both Saturn and Uranus are falls. Okay. I injured my ankle and my wrist because I had on shackles and chains. Okay. And wasn't supposed to be on the steps with shackles and chains on. They wasn't supposed to put all that jewelry on me until I got to the bottom tier, which is why I fell down the steps. And that's what she wanted to see. And that's what she said too. She says, I believe you're hurt, but I believe you did it to yourself. And she was right. I didn't deny it. I didn't affirm it. Okay. But what I brought that up to say is that more people use this shit than you know. I have 2 clinical psychiatrists that call me with the charts of their clients. Mm-hmm. So more people use it than you know. And if they don't use it overtly and consciously, they use it by way of protocol. Because Benjamin Franklin put astrological hierarchy all throughout the government that they designed. Which is why the president gets inaugurated on a specific day. Why the 4th of July falls on the day that it does and all of that. All of that is constructed off of an astrological template.
All right. Last question. When you have Aries and Saturn, what does it mean?
You mean you have Saturn in Aries? See, Aries is the space, and Saturn is the object. So you can't have Aries in Saturn. You mean you got Saturn in Aries? These people, depending on the house that it's in, depending on the aspects to Mars in the birth chart, because Mars speaks for Aries. Right? No matter what's in Aries, Mars speaks for it. So Mars in Aries by itself talks about a person who is here to build temperament, to learn self-restraint. In which matter, in which area of life, I ain't got a clue right now, because all I know is that you got is that you got Saturn in Aries. I don't know whether that's in the 10th place, 9th, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th place, so I can't elaborate on it more than that, right? It also talks about military training, or you training yourself militarily or with militants. You have to learn self-restraint. Is the most simplest definition of it. Saturn talks about maturity and restraint, and Aries is the big baby, the spoiled brat. So the struggle between getting your way and not getting your way and developing the patience to strategize, Saturn, and to execute, Mars, is what you're really here doing in this incarnation with that placement. And I don't know if you got planets in Capricorn, Cancer, or Libra, then you got serious challenges to that development. Perhaps an injury to the face or head, a heavy blow to the face or head. You fell and hit your head, or something heavy hit you in your head. That is Saturn in Aries too, no matter what cusp it's on. Short and succinct.
Right. Ra. Another one, my brother. With that being said, Ra, let the people know once again how they could contact you, and let them know if you got anything coming up, my brother.
Okay, I would also add on that Saturn talks about the father, and Aries talks about temperament. So the father was very key in the development of your temperament, whether he was present or not. His absence or presence, his contribution or the lack thereof, greatly had impact on your ability to exercise self-restraint, especially when you're angry, excited, or in the face of violence, or determined to execute violence. Anybody could reach me any day of the year, but refrain from holidays, man. I don't celebrate them, but I don't want to be bothered Okay, I want to use those days to chill with my family, really, right? And because about 8 different people called me on Christmas, and they had 8, 9 people there that they wanted read, right? So I don't want to do holidays no more. But you can call me any other day between 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I'll give you a 5-minute sample. Okay, that's a one-time thing. All right, I have to say that because our folks like to take advantage of the sample tray, and eat the whole thing. Okay, don't come back to me 5 or 6 times that the sample.
These niggas is something.
Yeah,
Oh, these niggas is something, boy.
yeah, man. The sample is for you to determine whether you want me to read your chart or not. If you call back for another sample, that means you should be buying a reading or getting in my class.
Yo, who be doing that? The dudes or the ladies be doing that?
Both, man, both. And the thing is, I thank God for the cloud. See, because now I save everybody's number.
Right.
And yeah, I got more than 3,000 phone numbers in my, but I don't care. Yeah, I once I marked that I've spoken to you already. If you call me back by that same number, I'm gonna know who you are.
Right.
And if you do it too many times, I'm gonna remember that birth date and that voice. I had a brother that was born on April the 14th. I ain't gonna say his name, okay? But this nigga called me repetitiously, man, like 8, 9 times over a period of a year. And I said to him, like, what do you think you're gonna do, man? He said, what are you talking about? I said, what are you gonna 5-minute me to death, motherfucker? You gotten like 10 5-minute samples. That's damn near an hour out of me already, right? And he said, man, is it just about the money? I said, yeah, because my kids eat, nigga. I'm only doing this shit to feed my family. When I was a bachelor, I was an artist, and I could afford to feed myself and pay my rent. Well, now I'm responsible for 5 other human beings. So, yeah, it's about the goddamn money. But you think I'm going to do that as a broke nigga? I'm going to be able to take care of my family and I'm performing a service for y'all and that I charge for. It's commerce, okay? It's economics, man. While you seeking knowledge, I'm practicing economics, okay? Yeah. And remember that. I'm doing everything commercially until my kids are old enough to feed themselves.
Yeah, don't ever fall for them games.
When you call me, get your sample. I'm a generous motherfucker as it is, okay? Then I hate that people take advantage of that. But I'm going to tell you, I'm going to give you something nice for free for 5 minutes. But when you come back to give back. You're going to get way more then. You're going to get more than your money's worth then. And listen, I done read more than, I read about 1,000 people a year, okay? Just think about that, all right? Now, I don't have nobody complaining about my shit. They would be on this platform right now trying to call me out. I'm a bad motherfucker with this shit. I deserve my fee.
Yeah, don't be in the chat telling the people you will give them readings for free. I don't know who the hell you are. So this ain't the place to market or promote. You gotta get on your own channel.
Let them do that. They need to practice.
No. I don't want.
Free ain't nobody gonna call them rich because niggas know free shit ain't worth a thing.
I've had experiences. People will come back and blame me and shit for people that they've had in the chat that they hollered at, man. So
I'm gonna tell everybody here too. Y'all should pick your readers like you pick your surgeons.
Yeah.
Because you let these people in your life. Okay? When you give them your birthday, your time, they're in. There's a vampire. They're in. There's no putting them out. They got your shit now. Okay? So make sure they trustworthy people. You so pressed to learn what somebody has to say about your future. Know that this profession is 99% scammers and charlatans.
99%.
Man, I have more than 50 impersonators on TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. Okay? So this is why I say call me. Because if you receive a text from me, I promise you it wasn't me.
Facts.
Okay? Yeah, if it didn't come straight from my phone number, it ain't me online. Because I don't do that texting shit. I don't do that messenger shit. Okay? Everything I do is face-to-face. So that you know you're talking to Akhu. That you're not talking to a swindler. Because I'm not going to swindle you. I give every client 30 days to come back to me and confront me with anything they didn't like about the reading. You know, no one does that. I have not, in my 40 years of doing this shit, had a complaint yet. The complaint is, I want more time. I want you to do it in person. That's the complaint.
Mm-hmm. Hey, with that being said, Ron, I want to thank you once again, my brother. We are getting out here. Thank you, family. I will be back Sunday. I will be back Sunday, family. So yeah. Tap in with the channel on Sunday. Ron, I'm gonna talk to you soon, my brother. Peace, family.
Peace.
Have a good night.